My goat.
Short, my guy.
What's up, man? How are you doing?
I'm good, man.
Good, bro. Is that the EC connection?
EC what?
The Eastern Cape connection.
Let me put on the earphones because I can't hear you properly.
Uh, uh,
Uh, okay. Yeah.
all right. Can you hear me properly? It's not on. Headphones.
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Are these the ones that you use to rap with?
What?
Are these the headphones that you use to rap with? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
All right. So yeah, so the other day I wanted to talk to you about that the whole race thing. There's quite a few things that I wanted to talk about today actually.
Mhm.
The other people, yeah, they said they're gonna come by later, but I just figured, fuck it, let me start. So that whole race thing that me and you do not agree on.
Oh, yeah.
Tell me,
Um,
tell me, what is the definition of racism?
okay. I think a huge issue around race and power for a lot of people is that they they take it as a simple subject. They take it as something which is no different than talking about religion or other things, where race and power are very united and they work in a very complicated way. If you look at any society is built on certain structures. These structures determine the type of society you have, they determine your opportunities, they determine actually who you can be and who you can't be. The way that race developed, coming from the West, is actually quite unique.
Sorry,
Are you
sorry.
playing music? Um, Racism and prejudice are not new. They've never been new on the planet. Human beings have been practicing it all over the world. You find even in India, you find the caste system. The caste system works on a similar basis as
Okay,
Western race.
just wait.
Yeah.
I want to hear you properly, bro. Okay, here we go. Sorry, man.
Everyone always tries to hit me up whenever I'm deep into a conversation. Okay, go for it.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yeah, perfectly.
Okay.
I can see you
Um,
perfectly.
so racism is a structure uh, that actually builds
Mm-hmm.
upon society. The type of society that you are going to build on has these theories and ideologies that you build them on. Racism, the way that we know it, the racism that we are feeling, is not the type of racism that you would have found in India or you would have found in early Europe. Because if we were to look back in Europe, we had black knights, we had black kings, we had black people who were influential teachers, philosophers, and where being black was not a thing that determined where you could be in society. Our racism, the way that we have come to know it, started with the expansion of Europe. So when Europe went out, because they were a Christian nation, they need a justification as to why they can take over people's land, why they can murder people. So they used the system that did exist. Prejudice is always there. An Italian does not like a British person. A darker person might not feel in a certain area that a lighter person is as good as they are. The prejudice will always exist amongst humans. The issue with the racism that we usually talk about is it's not the prejudice racism. It's a racism where the system was fundamentally built to actually deny people based on the prejudice. So once you are able to create laws that outlaw another person based on the prejudice that you have on them, this is the type of racism that we have now. And it's maniacal and very, very subtle. It's as simple as you live in a township. A township was built using that system. It's built far away from the cities. It makes it more difficult for you to access resources. This was not a system that happened by mistake. It was a system that was actually planned for. They made it on purpose. So the racism that we had before, pre the rise of the Western Europe that we know now, pre the rise of countries such as Italy, France, the UK, we didn't have this type of racism. We are still dealing with the racism that built slavery, the racism that allowed people in China to be used as test subjects for opium, the type of racism that actually harmed people all over the world. So the irony about racism, we find it here in South Africa. South Africa is probably one of the best things about the study of racism, is that it's illogical. You find that they separate you based on something which changes. You can have family members who are very dark than you. You can have family members that even look like another so-called race. And apartheid was suffering because of that. They could not really categorize people very well. They were struggling because I could be in a black family and I look colored for how they set up the races. And what is quite dangerous about this type of racism, because it deals with power and access to resources. People within your own group can be racist against the entire group. So there might be people who have access to that, to the prizes that you get if you follow the system, and they keep out other people from the system. Usually when you refer to racism, I understand where you're coming from, and I can see, like, yeah, you're exactly speaking about how generally people look at it. I usually always refer you to the social science one that always speaks about power. Even when we talk about family structures, we look at power. Even the family structure where the man is the head of the household, that is a power dynamic. It comes from a certain tradition of family structures, where if you were to talk about Africa, Africa is very diverse and very difficult. In Africa, there are family structures where the woman is the head of the family. We look at the Jewish structure. The Jewish structure, you become only Jewish because of your mother, not your father. So humanity is always switching between all of these ideologies. But all of these ideologies, some of them, not all of them, let me not generalize them, they work on power. Any ideology that works on power is very dangerous. It's even when we speak about the new woke ideologies, where we find a lot of people being cancelled. It's an element of power, where a person knows that I can take bread from you. If you say what offends me, I'm able to destroy you. And that's how racism works, usually. When we have black people who have this prejudice against white people, I usually look at it as a prejudice, because a black person cannot go out and create a law that white people must carry a bus. And they've never created a law where white people must carry a bus. A white person can't rent my house, where you tell a state agent that a white person can't rent my house because they're white. So it's that type of discrimination. It is going away. We shouldn't be lying and pretend like it's a center. And we have disingenuous politicians who actually use it for themselves. and like, I want to gain some support from these disenfranchised people. Let me use it. Let me use this racism to my benefit. And this is actually where the dangerous part is, where you find politicians, especially in South Africa, where it's like, we failed to build you homes. The real issue is white people. No. Is that you are benefiting from the structure that was left for you. You didn't want to change it because it feeds you, and you don't really care about the people that it affects negatively. And you're using now this type of structure and ideology to actually point away from you. We find that a lot. Even xenophobia. Xenophobia is about power. When you hear the arguments that people present, xenophobia and racism are very similar in that they're trying to take power from another group, or an imaginary group is the other. The imaginary group has taken power. They have the resources from our communities. We speak about how these foreigners are taking our tuck shops. Which tuck shops were ours? When did these tuck shops become ours? When did we create this economy that can be taken away? We're always pretending like we don't know the solutions to our issues, and we want to blame another person. It's like even this land issue. The land issue has been discussed for years, decades, even centuries. The ANC was formed around the land issue. The land issue can't be solved by you saying, hey, a white man took my land. That does not solve the issue. What's the issue? Systematically, you have been moved out of land. You were made migrant workers because the economy wanted you to be migrant laborers. You were the majority, and therefore they needed cheap labor to extract resources. How do you change the system? Because the system will remain. You can get your farm, but your farm will need the same black bodies. Until you change the system fundamentally, you can't do anything about any of these issues. I think a lot of us buy into these things. The poor, they're wrong, because we can't really be taking sins of the past and bringing them in today and saying, hey, the poor Van der Merwe, he did this. It doesn't work like that. We must look at the system that was created, and the system still prevails because the people who do benefit are the people who are closest to power. And they're the same people who are running around and like, you must hate these Indians, you must hate these whites. And they know very well that a majority of people who benefited were the well-connected. You could have been white. You could have worked on a farm as a white person. When we speak about white people, I think Kasital is the one that captures it the best. If you're a rich black person and you have access to resources, they call you Angambla. You become white, because that's what whiteness is associated with. It's not generally the group, but it's access to resources, where blackness is linked to poverty. That's why you find the most extremely prejudiced white people are the ones that are closest to black people in economic opportunities. You find a white guy in London. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So I just want to ask, so a black person can be racist?
Yeah. But not in the way of prejudice.
Okay.
They can be racist by using the racist system against other people.
Okay, yeah. So being prejudiced towards someone based on their skin color. Okay?
Yeah, no, you're saying something?
Oh, I'm saying, so a black person can be prejudiced against someone else based on their skin color, so they can be racist.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's actually
then also
to power. Sorry?
Okay. All right. Yeah. So what is systematic racism? I hear it all the time, but I think you were mentioning it, but
systematic racism is just the system. We talk about society. How is it built? If it's built in a way which prejudices other people and uses laws to move people out and prevent people from being able to access opportunity based on who they are and not on their abilities, this is when we start to talk about systematic racism and how it's institutionalized.
Okay, so then like a system like apartheid would be systematic racism.
Yeah.
Because it's favoring one race over another and then building systems towards that race.
Yeah.
Or towards that race against another race. Right? So currently, do you say that there's still systematic racism?
Yeah. If we're to look at how South Africa went into a transition, we did not dismantle the systems. A lot of the apartheid systems remained. We can even look through the laws in South Africa. Some of them are apartheid laws because they benefited an elite class. The native elites found that the system that was there was beneficial. You can speak about specific parties, the ANC, regardless of which party is inside there. These people are native elites. They are cut off from us. They might look black.
So
they're just wearing
so you then could say that it's not primarily systematic racism, but systematic prejudice. Is that what you're saying? So whatever structure that you're looking at in society, within society would be prejudice.
Oh, yeah. Even my side, you were buffering.
Is that me or you?
I'm not sure. This side, it's raining. It's like a thunderstorm.
Okay, I can't hear you now.
Yeah.
Why are you not speaking now? And now?
Yeah.
It's a thunderstorm.
Yeah.
Look, I missed the rain, man.
Nah, I don't miss
Okay, it's alright. I can still do it. Okay, so systematic racism is a system that is like apartheid.
Yeah.
That's created based on races to then be oppressive against one party because of their race and then uphold another one because of their race.
Yeah.
So that's systematic racism. Regardless of the color of the race.
No.
Okay, is that a yes?
It doesn't care about the color of the race. It speaks about whoever holds power. So power is usually broken up to economic power, political power, and social power.
Okay, so there's a lot of systems. Go for it. So whoever holds the cards.
Repeat
Is that what you said? Whoever holds.
Yeah, whoever holds power. Okay. So just imagine, let's say the world is a casino. Whoever owns the casino determines the outcome on the floor. So whenever you're looking at issues of power, it's always who holds the entire area, the entire society. They're the ones that determine how things move. Yeah.
Okay, so then South Africa, for example, now, right? The ruling party is predominantly black, right? So they're systematically racist to non-black people?
Their one is complex because they only hold a certain part of power. They are funded by people.
Yeah, but this
given money by certain interest groups and therefore controlled by those interest groups. Policies are made to a certain direction. Not everything is in power. If you don't hold all the power, you determine your destiny. So when you're looking at anything,
so systematic racism is only racist when you hold all the power.
There needs to be an element of holding power. So when you're looking at political power cannot function without economics. Economics is the basis of power. If you don't have money or don't have access to credit, you're unable to even be a political party. You need to pay. You need to be paid. You need materials. Whoever holds usually economic power controls political power. Political power shifts the social power within a structure. So this is a debate that's also happening in America as to who is the true ruler. Because if I elect someone, I elect someone given a choice to elect someone. The choice is given to me. It's not an organic thing that comes out and I'm like, oh, Cyril Ramaphosa ever in the country. He's the best amongst everyone else. No. I was given an option of people that were predetermined before I came there. I just vote for the one that I'm more likely to agree with. Where it's usually described as you are being herded as a sheep. You don't choose your shepherd. And as a sheep, you might fear the shepherd, but it's always the farmer that you should be scared of. We don't know who the farmers are. So when we're looking at systematic racism, it benefits. There's an economic benefit for the majority of South Africans to be in the situation they are in. It's cheap labor. A lot of South Africans are denied opportunities because it's just cheaper. Racism is a capitalist instrument of accumulation. We must not remove capitalism from it. Capitalism uses racism as a means to an end, profit. Until this is
so why racism? Why is it only racism that's always talked about? I mean, every kind of. What about sexism? And also, again, it's like
also used.
My question. It's also used.
Yeah, it's also used. Just look at all these systems that you're usually dealing with. All of these systems have an end goal to them. Even if you're looking at the popular movement, when they're touching on the issue, there is an economic element to it. We can talk about racism like for hundreds of years. Racism benefits a certain agenda. Sexism benefits a certain agenda. It's about being able to utilize human bodies for accumulation. Any system is about that. It's about accumulating. Even if you were to go to a king uses human bodies for his benefit. What we're fighting against as activists, and many activists fight against, is for the basis of a society to be on the exploitation of a certain group. If you're going to exploit us, let us at least be able to determine our destiny. And racism keeps on focusing on certain groups and excluding those certain groups, where they are able to take your production, but they will not include you into the society.
Okay, so apartheid was a systematically racist system, right? Because white people were in power, right? Oppressing black non-white people, right? Even when you were a white person that was not in power.
Sorry?
So even if you were a white person that was not in power, would you still then be oppressive of a black person or a non-white person that's...
The difficult part about racism, for a lot of people who have studied it, is that it also oppresses people who are in effect are part of the group that is oppressing, let's say, a majority of brown people, white people who are also being oppressed by the very system, because the system was about extraction. Apartheid colonization was about extraction. So it used very poor white people, middle-class white people, as a buffer for those who are really extracted. So if we're to look at it, racism also has a class dynamic. Black people were the majority. They were the biggest people that could be taken as cheap labor. The other groups are still smaller even to this day. So logically, as a capitalist, when we look at the apartheid structure, they said we needed to take these black people and use them. We need a justification as to why we are using these people, because we are a Christian nation. So you need a justification. These people are subhuman, 2/3 of a human being.
So then,
therefore, your justification is
so
there.
So then the ruling party now is predominantly black, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So are they oppressive and racist to white people, or it's not that way because they're still being controlled by a small minority of white people?
To put it in a more simplistic term, they are using the same racism that apartheid was using. They might be black, but they're doing the same thing. The same groups are being oppressed. Poor whites are still being oppressed. Black people are being oppressed. Colored people are being oppressed. The divide and conquer rule is still being used. Race is being spewed everywhere. They're using the same systems. And it's unfair to say all of them want the system to remain the same. Some did fight against the system. Some did try to find alternatives to the system. But generally, they're using the same system to continue the extraction of resources. That's if we're to look at the main goal is extraction for resources to be taken to more developed nations and for us to supply raw materials. So there's a huge element of us taking racism as just an emotive thing. It has a huge element of ideology, and it's an economic system. It works. Sadly, it works.
Okay.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this as well. Why do you think that we find it so comfortable to, as non-white people, to be openly racist towards white people, and when white people do it to non-black people, it's immediately shunned upon?
It's how society is. Whoever was formerly the oppressor is given leeway to oppress whenever they do get power. It's just a normal element. It's like if us as guys here were to say, I can get a girl tomorrow, I'll kick out this girl that I have today and get a new one tomorrow, and she's on the way, will be shunned upon. They're like, you're oppressing women. But if we're to hear the Beyonce song to the left, that's what it's talking about. If you were to sing the same lyrics as a man, you get a totally different reaction from society. So it's how society tries to protect those that were once disempowered. It's a sad state of affairs, though.
Okay, so then it's almost as if, like, if a group has had a significant amount of victims back in the day, whenever it was, right? Then they can then have the right to then be oppressors in the future to that group that they think oppressed them.
Yeah, that's what happens. That's why oppression never ends. There's always a cycle of oppression. It's usually said that the oppressed will always oppress. So the cycle always continues because victim mentality does develop. That I've been hurt, I've been scarred, I was subjugated, and you want to grab power. It's a natural human instinct. when power is taken away from you, you want to grab it. You can use force, you can use whatever method that you want. It's no different than some of the stories that you hear about. I think about a lot of Fanon and Bigo with their writings, where they actually spoke about you as an oppressed person having to build yourself up again internally. A lot of the stories that we hear about land grabs, even in Zimbabwe, was that, yes, they removed the farmer that they saw as their great enemy. After the farmer was removed, those same people were fighting over to the house of the farmer, because that was a symbol of power. They wanted the house of the farmer and started to kill each other to be able to become the farmer. Because if we're to look at how the oppressed people behave, once they get the glimpse of power, they try to replace those who used to be the oppressor and sit at the same table and start to commit the same type of problematic behavior. This is why when society keeps on shifting, there's always people who try to fill the gap of power. When they enter, they are as bad as the people who left. So regardless of society, yeah, they become usually worse. This is what's happening in Africa.
So
the colonizer.
So then this can be then translated into many other factors. So it doesn't just have to be like race again, right?
Yeah.
Like apartheid happened, so therefore black people now try to oppress white people, right? So they're using the same system to gain power against white people, right? And now white people, there'll come a time where it'll switch up again and it'll go back and forth, right? So in that same breath, it's like what women are doing now with this whole feminism talk, with trying to fight against men, right? Who they then felt as though had oppressed them, and now making all these laws and all these changes to then not only benefit them and oppress men, instead of trying to level out the playing field, instead of trying to equalize rights for everyone, it's equalizing rights for ourselves because you guys oppressed us, and therefore we're going to come now for whatever you guys have. So it's like we're the victims. We are now justified in being the victimized.
But that's how the words of power. When you're looking at how the current elite are, they're not only oppressing black or white people. They're using the same system to oppress everyone, because now they've replaced a certain class that used to be at the top classes. They're doing the same things, as corrupt as the apartheid government, as violent as the apartheid government. In certain degrees, because of certain people who are there and certain groups that are there, some things will change, especially things that weren't working under apartheid. You're still buffering now again. Buffer.
Yeah, keep going, go for it. I can hear you.
So even when we're looking at the feminist movement, they don't want equality, they want equity. They want a piece of the pie. This is all movements are like that. It's unfair to say all movements, but most movements, that's how they end up. They don't want equality they want equity for them. This is why you don't find a lot of movements. I don't like this subject, but let's touch on it a little bit. A lot of women are not running to the dangerous jobs that men are performing. They're looking for the best jobs that men are performing at. They don't say, I want to now go work on an oil rig, risking my life there. They tell they're looking for a piece of the pie. They want to sit at the powerful tables. They don't want to be equal to men. They want the place where powerful men sit. The majority of men have no access to power, and that's just a true thing. Like the majority of white people have no access to power. They're just a buffer for those who do have access to power. this is where systems always confuse people. When you say white people are racist, you must qualify it. You must be like, white people who have power over me are racist. Because if Jan there walking in the street, Jan can't do anything to me. Jan can say whatever he wants. He can do whatever he feels like. But me and Jan are on an equal footing. But I can't do anything to someone who does have power. So that is where the complicated part of all of these systems is. It's about power, initially. So before you think of them in the more simplistic way of just the use of prejudice, you must look at where the power is. And always look at where these activists are aiming for. They never aim for a low-level person. They always aim for a very powerful person.
What's up, boys?
Hey.
Aye.
Can you see this man? He said he's in a thunderstorm in KZN.
Yeah, no, he's going through it, hey?
Yeah, what he was saying?
Yes, I said yes to his point because I think in all our conversations around feminism and feminists, it's always had this negative connotation in that you always made the point that women want equality, but when it comes to specific topics that they benefit from. But what he then touched on, what he said that really I felt was very profound was it's not the equality, it's the, he said, what did he say? What's the word he used? Equity. I was like, yes. I definitely, I think that's more of a positive way to look at it, because I really don't know how it even got to a point where it's just all negative talk when it's a topic on feminism. Then it's always like they're angry. They want to be like men, you know, type of vibes.
Here's a question for you then. How's that any different to body positivity movements?
How is what different?
How is the whole feminism talk and the whole racial talk different to that? That it's not that how's it different to the fact that it's not actually about equality but more about benefiting personally?
I think with any movement, when there is a specific agenda that you're trying to advocate for, obviously you're trying to advocate for the fact that you saw a disadvantage in yourself or in your community. So obviously it's going to come off as if it's self-centered because type of vibe. So it's going to come off as an energy of you're thinking about yourself. Oh my gosh. But I mean, there's a different light to that as well. A person can see it as, well, yes, the society is fucked up. Society is unequal. What am I doing as a person? I can join a specific movement that I feel I'm more inclined to, or I feel like I can make a difference in, you know? It's like there's a lot of movements that are not even movements. If I had to take it to, I don't know, you're into soccer and say, why is it that, I don't know, there's groups everywhere. What I'm trying to say is that there's groups everywhere and movements form a part of groups, and groups are not always gonna have it right, or they're not always gonna please everybody. And that's just the gist of it, you know?
Okay.
Yeah.
Will, what do you want to say?
I think a lot of us, because some of these issues feel some kind of way, but if we're to just look at it in the most simplistic way, human beings are always seeking to survive the best way that they know how. Victimhood is the easiest way to get society to actually shift and actually support whatever you feel like. White supremacy is based on victimhood. We must start to understand that. The KKK was built on victimhood. The Nazis were built on victimhood. We have the Buddha Bond that was victimhood. AWB built on victimhood. We have so many historical organizations.
Was BE built on victimhood?
BE was built on power. There was an elite that wanted to
not
have
victimhood.
No.
Yeah.
BE to the point is that you can't access it. I can't access it. I'm not close enough to power. BE benefits those who are the closest to power.
It's which is the ones closest to power, but the ones that are victims. Like white supremacy doesn't benefit white people that are not close to white supremacist people in power.
White supremacy as a movement has developed a lot. Speaking about the forms that it's taken, it's quite different from how they used black faces to enrich. BE has benefited more white people than black people. It's about power. The example of Cyril Ramaphosa when he was taken out as the general
let's look. So besides who it's benefited, so we can argue about that point, that it benefited. Okay, maybe we can't argue about it, but let's say it doesn't matter who it's benefited. But if that BE is then a system based on victimhood, because it's because I was oppressed, and because I'm oppressed, I will then create a system to make me benefit.
Yeah.
Or me and others that feel as though their victims benefit.
Yeah, it'll be people that are like me and like-minded that are in my group.
Benefit.
Yeah, it's about benefit.
Okay. So it goes back to what the boys were saying now, that whenever you create a group, right, you inevitably create a space whereby the people that are in that group kind of feel as though that they would benefit.
Yeah.
Right? And then inevitably you would then oppress someone else, even if that is not your intention. Okay. So it's almost similar to something like, okay?
Oh, no, continue.
Oh, so it's something similar to like having a conversation. You will inevitably end up, by having an opinion, oppress someone else, regardless if you want them to be oppressed or not.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Now the thing is then what these whole movements that I also can see is that, or also kind of look at, is that the fact that it doesn't only benefit and oppress someone else, but it does the same for you as the person. Because again, it's like you can be part of BEE, for example, right? And being a male, you can be part of it, and you can benefit from it, right? So maybe you can benefit from something like the quota system, like the racial quota system, right? And you can benefit from that, but in the same breath, in that same system, right, you can then be a victim of that, of the part where it then looks at woman empowerment. Do you understand? Being a male. Because then there will be certain privileges given to women and not to men in that same system, and then you would be a victim in that, or you would be oppressed in that. But then that exact same system, because you're black, you would then benefit from the benefits of having a racial quota system.
Yes. That's the weird thing about our systems that we build. Whenever we try to fix something, we cause a problem somewhere else, regardless of where you can go around the world. Every solution comes with a problem, and that problem will need a solution that will come with a problem for another person. It's systematic. I'm not sure how we can ever resolve that. So whenever you try to do good by someone, there's someone else that you're doing bad.
Yeah. Okay. And more often than not, it's you doing something bad to yourself somewhere in the future. Because again, it's something like that. Like if you're a guy and if you're a human being and you're going against the elite, for example, right? So people that have more than you, more money than you, right? And you're a student, right? As soon as you leave and you graduate, right? You then become part of the working class. You then become part of the elite.
Yes.
right? It might not be the top 1%, but it might be the 1% of the 1%, right? So everything that you were thinking that you were oppressed by, you then become the oppressor.
Yes, but that's how it
so
works.
Then the same vigor that you went against the oppressors for, you then need to meet that same fate. You hear what I'm saying? You hear me? Can you hear me? Now?
I was sorry.
What did you say? What did you say?
Oh no, someone was trying to call me.
Oh, okay. Your side piece.
They're still trying to call me. Let me just hear what they have to say because they are persistent.
Okay, let me. I'll go on the live again. Okay.
I'm back.
Are you back?
Now, can you hear me? Yeah.
Wait, let me end this one. I'm gonna go back on again. Okay.
Okay, cool.